Cool beans. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Ignite More. My name is Kenneth Worles. I'm the president at 3i Creative Communications, and we're excited about today's discussion, conversation. I know a lot of you all that are attending are working the DEI space, and so I think it's going to be some fun conversation going around today that talks about this amazing topic. So just to tell you a little bit more about 3i Creative Communications is a social impact marketing agency located in Memphis, Tennessee, as well as Washington, D.C. 3i helps do good brands and organizations, increase engagement, build community relationships, and magnify bold messages. We started the Ignite More series in the middle of the pandemic because we wanted the conversations to continue while people were at home, and wanted to make sure people were still learning, people were still growing around important topics in our community. And so we've been doing this for almost 2 years now, and we host the Ignite More conversation every quarter on a different topic. And so today's our topic is focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what does that mean in practice, right? We know the term, it's been a popular phrase being used from the biggest brands over the world to the local politicians for some time. So we really want to tackle some of the strategies around DEI and how do you communicate DEI, right? And even the good and the bad of it. And so I'm super excited to be with some amazing speakers, some amazing thought leaders in this space to talk about this particular issue or industry. Just some housekeeping, quick little housekeeping. If you all have a question, you can put it in the Q&A button down at the bottom. If you have a thought, question, or a link or something around the conversation, you add it in the chat as well. We love to have engagement during these conversations, and we'll make sure that we have those questions that you all put in the chat to utilize at the end, towards the end of the event. We ask a few questions and go talk with the panelists for the first half, and then we spend the last 10 minutes of this conversation answering some of those questions that you all may have. So don't hesitate to ask the question that may be pertaining to your role or to the industry as a whole, but we want to make sure we're answering some of those questions. And so before we jump into the first question, I would love for the panel to introduce themselves. Tell us your name, where you're from, and your role, and the work that you do at that company. And so I'll pass it first to Mauricio.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes. I don't know if being the first one is the best or the worst, but here we go, right? It can only get better from here. So super excited to be here. Thank you to Kenneth, to 3i, and all the participants for taking time to join us. My name is Mauricio Calvo. I am a native of Mexico City. I've been a Memphian for about 25 years or probably even more. And, I say I'm a Memphian by heart. And I run Latino Memphis. Latino Memphis is an organization that is all things Latinx. But at the end of the day, we center our work around 3 pillars. We support the community through social and legal services. We address systemic issues through advocacy and engagement. We collaborate with other nonprofits and government agencies to move a progressive pro-immigration agenda. Personally, I raised I'm from Mexico City. I am openly bi, queer, something I don't even know what I am. I'm the father of 3 teenagers, and yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Perfect. Welcome. We can go with Karen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Willams. I am the founder and CEO of Cultural Avid. And at Cultural Avid, what we do is we help companies that say they want to be more intentional with their recruiting of diverse professionals. We help them to audit and create strategies to do just that, to attract, hire, and retain more diverse talent. And we also help them with diversity recruiting. So I'm excited. I'm actually here in Nashville, but I am originally from Memphis. So I'm happy to be here and share with you all today.
Nice. Welcome.
Thank you.
Go ahead and go.
Yes. Michael.
Okay.
Last but not least.
All right. My name is Michael Alston. I'm with the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, located in Memphis, Tennessee, where I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Inclusion, Equity, and Diversity, Chief Diversity Officer. I'm from Brighton, Tennessee, which is right up Highway 51 in Tipton County. When I grew up there were 2 flashing red lights and 1 policeman. I went to school at the University of Tennessee at Martin, which was a metropolis for me, and I loved it there. I got married in 1993 to Chandra Alston now, and she was from Memphis, and so she wanted to get back home. So in 93, we moved back here, and she also works for the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. I am a 34-year employee within the UT system. I've worked on 3 campuses. I'm gonna stop there.
Cool beans, cool beans. Thank you for that. Welcome. So I want to make sure that you all hear me well. All right, so let's jump right into it. First question, since the social awakening of 2020, companies have been hyper-focused on DEI, with about 90% of companies reporting that they have a DEI strategy today. Can you, each of you all, describe how DEI was viewed prior to this social awakening within your company or industry, and how has it changed since then? This could be flowing, so anyone could jump right in when they feel the spirit.
Oh. I'll start because I don't think mine is probably going to be as complicated or as complex as everyone else's. So originally my company, we did just basic, we started with just only diversity recruiting in the tech space because that's where we saw the need, and have evolved since then. But so for me, when I started the company, it was 2019, and it was so hard to get companies to just have a meeting with me about diversity and hiring in their tech departments. Even though all you saw in the articles, it was all about how, Silicon Valley was having such a hard time recruiting diverse talent. But prior to, the what happened in 2020, it was very hard for me to get those meetings. But after 2020, or after, the incident with George Floyd, they were calling me. It was a constant, it was like an awakening, like you said, that companies were saying, oh, wait, we should be doing something. Or, they wanted to be on the right side of what was going on. And so I think for me, it was more of an awakening of people leaders looking around and saying, yes, we do have a homogeneous work environment. How do we make that better? And how do we find companies that are doing the work so that we can, implement those strategies? So I would say companies became more aware and were trying to do the work of figuring out how to fix it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Go, Michael.
Okay. Being in higher education, I think what you find is that a lot of organizations like mine were already doing diversity and inclusion work, DEI work. And so I think when the things happened with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, I think what it did is it heightened sort of the empathy within the organization, in that our students, our faculty, our staff that were affected by this in whatever way, how they processed it. I think what they wanted to see from the institution is what are you committing to, maybe from an empathic standpoint, what are some things that you're doing from an action-oriented space to show that we have your support, and you understand what we're going through, even though this didn't affect those individuals directly, it still was a part of of the population that they're a part of. And so I think that's what a lot of colleges and universities were doing and organizations outside of higher education was responding from an empathic standpoint of what type of action could they take to show that people that are into their brand or part of their constituency, what they were doing to show that they cared.
Yes. Mauricio?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so for us was kind of a twofold, right? Because if you think about it, as an organization whose mission is to, as I mentioned earlier, to impact and to grow and to advance the Latinx community, there was a part of us that was like the rest of the people on the panel, like, okay, finally, is like this voice from above saying this is important. So it was cool to be able to say this is what we have been talking about for a long time without really properly articulating or having much success. And on the other hand, I say twofold, because we also have to do that internally, right? What does that mean? First, what does that mean to the people we're trying to advocate, that we're trying to get in, but also internally, what does that mean for Latino Memphis? So that was, I think that was a really good moment to say, oh, wow, like I don't know, we're allowed to cuss in here. I'll keep it PG-13, but it's like, oh God, like we have to figure it out. And I think it was important. I mean, like I had to look at my own team and make sure that we were doing the right things internally, promoting women, people of color, hiring, like everything that we were supposed to be doing, because we couldn't be like talking about something that we were not doing internally. So we came up with a DEI statement that I felt that was pretty comprehensive. Like it was not like I now that I look back, it's not enough to say, well, we are a non-discriminatory, like, no, like we embrace diversity in all its forms, right? And really going beyond race and ethnicity, going about mental disabilities and physical abilities, about having an accent. Look, I'm talking with an accent, right? About sexual orientation, about immigration status, about different ideas. So, I feel it's like this bittersweet moment where what happened in 2020 was very dramatic and very, very sad. But I feel like many of us are trying to make the best out of that and at least honor those who have sacrificed their lives, not only in 2020, but for the last 200 years in this country, to say, okay, now this is our moment. And the biggest question is like, okay, now we know the what, now the challenge in front of us is figuring out the how, right? Because this is a moment and we have to capitalize on this moment. And now that the door has been cracked open, like how do we fulfill this promise and this ask that we've been begging for a long time?
Yeah, no, I agree. And you kind of moved into that, my second question, talking about, internal work, right? I know with companies moving virtual and being spread out and people being at home, that conversation had to be not only be strategically implemented from the external standpoint to their customers, to their donors and supporters, but also internally, right? And so you kind of started discussing it a little bit, Mauricio, but I'd love to hear some of what were some of those strategies that you all have implemented internally to create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive work environment.
Is that for me?
Yeah. You can start it off. Since you laid it
I want to overtake the conversation. So, so again, the first thing that we did is, as a group, we came with a statement, and we were fortunate enough to join the Kresge Foundation cohort on racial equity. And that provided a little bit of the framework and also a commitment. And I'll be honest, even a financial commitment, because this work is not free, right? I mean, we know that large companies have DEI officers and departments and HR. And I know, people like Michael and Karen has a company that probably helps companies to get this set up. But you have a small nonprofit. and we are also have to do this. So grateful to Kresge specifically for for being a thought leader on this and for saying, hey, here's a framework, here's some ideas. So we did that. I personally joined a couple of fellowships in the last couple of years that really were, opened my mind to a lot of things, because even as, I mean, like I have to recognize like my own whiteness and colorism, and there's nothing wrong with being white, but I am Latino. I am part of the LGBT community. I have an accent. I have ADHD, but still, at the end of the day, if I don't open my mouth, I'm a white guy, right? And so I have to recognize that, but also have to interact with other leaders that struggle with different issues and learn a lot about them and find intersectionalities. So that's something that I did at the leadership level. Again, organizationally, we created this framework and this, this statement. Then we started putting things out to our partners. Like, if you want to be a partner of Latino Memphis, we have a form, and you have to literally read through this form and commit that you are going to be, embracing our values. And you'll be surprised. We have organizations. I mean, there are philanthropic organizations out there that will not support LGBT work or support people who are undocumented. So we have to make a decision as an organization and say, are we comfortable not working with these people? Right? Because, and absolutely we are. I mean, now I can tell you I am unapologetic about it, but I have to be candid and say at the beginning it was a little scary, because in the nonprofit world, every dollar counts, business world too. And it was like, we cannot afford to lose any of these supporters and stuff. And we have a donor, for example, and again, this is about diversity, right? That, met with our development director and myself and said, last year we gave you a significant amount of money, and now we're seeing that you are working closer to Planned Parenthood. And unless you stop that, we're not going to support you. And we were like, we're okay with that, right? I mean, and so there's some more other things that we also did some DEI training for all our entire staff. So I let other people talk, but I think it's a multi-level strategy from the top to, talking to partners, to talking to donors, to be willing to bite the bullet if that's what it's going to take and make some sacrifices. I will tell you this, for every dollar that we lost, I think we probably earned 2 more. So, I didn't know that at the beginning. It was like super scary. And now I'm so glad that we are being who we are. It's like coming out again. So it was good.
That's great. That's great. Amazing. Anyone else want to chime in on that? Some of the strategies that you all did, some things that worked, maybe some things that didn't work?
So I think for us, when the pandemic hit, one of the things we had to do was let our employees work remotely. And what we found out from that is that a lot of people actually like doing that, and they're very effective at doing it. And so the other thing that meant is you got to invest in some other equipment like laptops, screens, if you want people to have 2 screens and so forth. But, my entire team, I have, counting me, there's 7 of us, but we sort of alternate days to be in the office, where Wednesday is a floating day. And I think everybody's pretty happy now. There was some bumpiness when I was trying to get the schedule right early on. But one of the other things that we had to adjust with is in trying to create, that equity, that inclusion, it was training. We had a certificate program that we had offered for several years, and it was face-to-face in the fall. And so we were at a standpoint where, because we weren't on campus, how are we going to deliver this certificate program? So we put everything online via Zoom. Well, what that did, unbeknownst to us, even though we kind of knew this, is we have employees that are stationed in Nashville, Jackson, Tennessee, the Graduate School of Medicine in Knoxville, the College of Pharmacy is in Knoxville, even though there's a branch here, there's a College of Medicine in Chattanooga. So what happened is when we opened that certificate program up, all of a sudden, all of these people feel like, gee, I really have a chance to interact with the people in Memphis and be a part of some of the programs that are offered, because usually, they would have to travel or not be able to participate. So what that sort of light bulb for us is that let's start offering more things via Zoom so that these employees, can feel connected and included. And so we've been doing that for a while, and a lot of our programs are like that now for all of the diversity programming that we do. The other thing that happened is again, going back to your initial question, a lot of our colleges created councils and committees around DEI. And so you have a lot of people that are engaged around that topic, again, because of the nature of the impetus that was behind it. And so I think you have a lot of people that feel included now from the standpoint of the primary dimensions that they bring with them to the table, and how you're able to leverage those experiences going forward with the things that you're implementing. So I think from that standpoint, internally, I think what we found is that people are able to do more training, they're engaged, and they really appreciate the ability to be able to work remotely. And so those were things we probably would not have explored had it not been for the pandemic.
Nice, nice. Karen, any thoughts you want to add? Gotcha, cool beans.
For us on this end, more so on the client side, but yeah.
Gotcha, perfect. All right, so in order to build, a true, diverse, inclusive, and equitable workplace, all constituents within the company have to be on the same page, right? How do you clearly articulate goals of DEI to management and disseminate that information to the rest of your staff, your consumers, and external community? I know that's a lot.
Yeah, give me.
Yeah, but overall, the thing is about communicating DEI. How have you all been successful at communicating it to different levels of your communities, whether it's management, staff, or external community?
I think for me, being able to communicate it with the client has been, I think more companies are actually noticing the issue, right, on their own. And so the communication for me on my side has been a little more more so delivering strategies or delivering the support that they need, because they have people within their organizations, or they're hiring now for this diversity and inclusion role. They're being more aware on their own. And so more so just giving them that support. So yeah, for me, it's more of the support side of how do we implement these things? What are the strategies? What do we need to do to attract this talent? And how do we keep them in the door once we get them in? So, being able to communicate those things have been really helpful.
Cool beans.
So one of the things that we've tried to do here is create programs that allow people to jump on where they're comfortable. So whether that's through our newsletter, through the commemorative months that we recognize, programs around that, through the diversity certificate program, through a more experiential program that we have, to a book club that we have, mini grants that they can apply for. So we've just tried to catch people, I hate to say this, but meet them where they are as far as their comfortableness, but also level of understanding, so that they can jump on at any point. And it's their choice. The diversity certificate program is not a mandatory training program. It's something that you decide to do voluntarily. And we've had we've filled every one of our classes, and you earn a certificate, but you have to take a test at the end. But you have a nice ceremony behind that. So I think those are the ways that we've done it. We have a listserv called Inclusion Listserv that we communicate information through. We also work with our communications and marketing department on branding around our office. And we have these documents, whether it's policy or a newsletter or other information that goes out on it, but it's branded a certain way so you know that it's from our office.
Gotcha.
I go back to, again, we're right now, I think all of us are in the question of how to maximize this moment, and how do we capitalize and in a meaningful way, right? Because the one thing we don't want to do is just for people to start checking the box. And I mean, I hear that in my own work. Oh, we have a Latina or Latino, and like, okay, we're done. Like, no, you're not, right? And we need to do more of that. And we also need to do more in positions of decision making for women, for people of color, you know, for LGBTQ people. I mean, it's just like we have a lot. So I think you know, what we are trying to do. I mean, we recognize that we have a long way to go. Like, we're grateful for the moment and the momentum, but I am in no way feeling like we have made enough advance. Like I don't know if it's my age or what is it that I feel like really impatient in a good way, right? Not impatient at the moment of giving up, but impatient like we gotta do better. We have to do more. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So I'll answer the question first. Like we are, I think, like we don't have like very specific like quotas or goals. We are trying to make this part of our culture, part of our DNA, like something we truly believe in, and we're putting it out in every way we can, right? Every opportunity that we have to show that we're a welcoming, inclusive, supporting organization. That's what we're trying to do. But I mean, there's a long way to go. And I mean, like, I'll speak about Memphis and I'll speak about the Latinx community. We still don't have a single Latinx elected official in the city or the county. We still don't have anybody in the state legislature that represents us. Neither the county or the city mayor have anybody at the director level who is a Latinx person, nor Shelby County Schools that educates 112,000 children every day, and 12% of them are Latinos and Latinas. So, even if you find me as a token, like, we got to do more than that, right? I mean, and don't tell me that people do not exist. So how do we, yes, celebrate that we are being recognized, but that we're not just going to stop by saying that you just hire a Black person or that you promoted a woman to some office to do that. So, so again, all this I say, like, we are building this internal culture at Latino Memphis. We're putting ourselves out. We are, talking about it, joining this kind of webinars, doing all these kinds of things, because we have to believe in ourselves first. We have to do, like, this is real. This is our moment. But we had to be smart and we had to be strategic. Because the one thing you don't want is somebody said, like, well, we tried and it didn't work, right? And or companies put that weight on somebody like Karen or Michael or myself or you guys. You have to figure it out. Or I joke about this all the time, and people say, like, oh, I had coffee with Mauricio at Latino Memphis. Like, okay, well, that's not going to do it, right? I mean, I love having coffee with people. Yeah, let's do that, but let's go beyond the coffee and let's just really build a plan and commit to this. So I feel like we're, again, making progress, but really we're at the very early stages of this work. And I know this work didn't start in 2020. I get that, but it's finally getting the momentum, and we have a long way to go.
Gotcha. I know I have some other questions in the queue, but I think after listening to this, I was curious. Is there a channel that you all prefer in your experience to communicate DEI, expand on the DEI conversation to your team or to the community? Right? Is email your channel of choice, or is it in person? You feel like you get the best dialogue and growth in person, or is social media taking and expanding that conversation in ways that you all experience? So do you all have a favorite channel to communicate these topics?
You know what? I wish we could do more things in person. I think communicating in person is best, because you really get to, feel the energy of the people in the room, and you really get to. So I would say first for me would be in person, and then second is like this, via some type of Zoom communication, and then lastly would be email. But definitely, I love, one-on-one, being in the room with people. You can kind of just really feel how they really feel about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. In person. And so I'm kind of struggling with how to, move from that, because that's probably more effective for me. I do social media. In my office, we just created an Instagram account, so we're a little behind on that regard. I do have a LinkedIn account where I communicate personally a lot, but yeah, I'm a fan of face-to-face as well.
We really try to use every tool at our disposal, because I mean, you have multiple audiences, and different people will follow you in different ways. And some audiences are much more open-minded to these conversations than others. I mean, and I would say, I mean, like, it's equally important for us to be, on channel 13 on a news story that probably Gen X's or Gen Z's are not going to watch, but then we do have an Instagram account. So I think it varies. And I have teenagers, right? So I feel like this is not like having the talk about any topic. Like, this needs to be an ongoing conversation. And I hope that our actions speak more than just saying, oh, cheer up, Latino Memphis is working DEI. I mean, hopefully just about everything that we do, it's kind of obvious that we're all about this. I should know better that I shouldn't assume that, but we're not necessarily like labeling ourselves as a DEI champions. Like I want our actions to speak for themselves. And I'm trying to be mindful, like, again, just when we do these things. I'll give you an example. So it was Pride weekend here in Memphis a couple of weeks ago. Like, we not only went, like, we had a booth, and we had, we marched on the parade, like, and then we posted that on Instagram, right? And it's important because I remember years ago, people used to think, I mean, I'm sure this happens across communities of color. You are perceived either as a very progressive or very conservative. Like, there are Black people that are very conservative, and there are Latinos and Latinas that are very conservative, right? And we cannot assume that all Latinx people are like super progressive, because they're not. So we're putting all these things that we're doing, not under the level of DEI, but we're saying, like, we were at Pride, and and we took Juneteenth off because we have to have solidarity and understand that. It was not a floating day for us. It was like, it's a statement, like, we are taking Juneteenth off because this is important for the values that we support. So those are the types of things that we're doing internally and externally.
Perfect. No, thank you for that. And I know into a little bit of Karen's wheelhouse, talk about recruiting when it comes to DEI, right? We are pushing people to recruit diverse talent, but then we find ourselves in another issue when it comes to retaining them, right? And so I love a little bit about how do you create an inclusive and equitable environment for that talent that's walking in excited because they saw what you all were standing for, and they see what you all are working on, and then they walk into this space. How do you create this space for them to stay? And then the second half of that is, has that increased retention by creating that environment for them?
So that's a loaded question. One, there is no one solution. So I think that's the first thing, is there's no one solution. There's no silver bullet that if you bring a diversity recruiting company in, we bring in talent, they're gonna stay. That's not how it works. It's such a big piece that needs to be done for companies to be able to recruit talent, for them to retain talent. And it starts with the corporation, right, or the company. It starts from the head down. And it's not just the HR team, and it's not just the CEO, it's the manager, it's all the people that's on the team. And I'll give an example of working with an engineering team. The HR team came to me and wanted to hire more diverse talent, which back then we weren't helping with strategy, we were just kind of helping people to recruit the talent. But the HR team was on board. But when our candidates went through the process, they had a horrible experience with the team leads that were interviewing them and the hiring managers. So the entire team has to be on board. So companies really have to figure out how do their employees feel about diversity and inclusion. Companies have hundreds of employees, and if you have a homogeneous work environment where it's mainly white males or white females, and you decide, I want to bring in Black, Latinx, the LGBT community, we want to really pump up and show that we're diverse, but you have not once talked to or, evaluated or got involved your current employees, and then you bring all these people in, to them, that's a culture shock that's different. How do you think they're going to treat them? So it starts with that. I think it starts with understanding your work, your current environment, your company culture, before you decide to bring in talent that is not like the other, right? You just have to start there. And then you layer on, right? You find out what type of environment you're dealing with, and then, you layer on what's the next step. Like, so now everybody's on board. What are we looking for? What are we trying? Because people say, I want to improve or increase diversity. What does that mean? Is that men, women? I worked with a company that, for them, a white male was diverse because their entire team were women. So what does diversity mean to you? People use this blanket word and are afraid to really break down and say what they want and what they need. So I think it's a lot of steps that have to be, it's a lot of work that has to be done for. It's not one single thing that I could say, hey, do this and it'll be better. But it can be done, but it definitely takes work. And if it's done properly, will talent stay? Yeah, I think so. I've talked to talent before, I've reached out to for a job opportunity, and they will say, no, I'm happy at my employer. That means that employer is doing something right. So there is talent that's saying, hey, my employer is doing a good job, my salary is good, my work-life balance is good, like everything works for them. So there are companies that are doing it right, that's getting it right, but it's so many steps to it with retention. How is their onboarding? How's the development? Do they have mentors? How is the benefits? If people think that, oh, just saying you can work from home is enough, that's not enough, or it's just so many components to diversity and inclusion. And even not that, just human beings, making them happy and stay at work, and we all be able to work together. So I don't know, it probably didn't answer your question, but.
Yeah, no, you did. No, you did. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts around the retention, utilizing inclusive and equitable approaches?
Oh, go ahead, Michael.
No, well, I was just going to say, I think when you bring individuals in from different identities, I think Karen mentioned something about the culture of the workplace. There's a guy in management named Peter Drucker who said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so no matter how strong your business strategy is, if your culture is not where it needs to be, you're not going to have that retention. And so I think when you bring people with different identities in, one of the things you want to do is make them feel like they're valued, they're leveraged, and they're welcomed. And so I think if you don't have that, you lose out. And I think that's the heart of what the Brene Myers quote is about. Diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. When you're not asked to dance, you're either not going to contribute, you're just going to be there, or you're not going to contribute, but you're also going to leave. And so that's where the retention issue comes up.
Guys.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, this is a tough market to retain people, right? To hire people and to retain them. So, and there's a part of me that says, like, good for them, right? Good for us, like, people are in high demand. There's another side as an employer, you're like, oh God, it's really hard to attract people and to retain them. And I think that has added to the relevance of this conversation, that people need to do this thing because it's the right thing, but also because employers need employees. We are a 25 people organization, so we are relatively small, and most of our staff is I would say just about everybody. I think people in general have some diversity. We expand that to the definition that, to a broader definition, right? But I will hope that my team feels, to Michael's point, in a healthy culture. I don't think that it has always been that way, even under my own leadership, but I think we have made significant strides on that. I would love for you to ask my team how they feel, if they feel welcome. I think we're losing people sometimes for other reasons, for other business, for other job opportunities and stuff. So I'm not saying that, hey, we figured it out, but within a small organization whose mission is to be diverse and whose staff is diverse, I think we have other challenges on attracting and retaining people other than DEI. I mean, and some of them, quite frankly, could be that sometimes people may not find a way to move up, right? I mean, people kind of hit a ceiling, and that's just kind of a natural cycle of that. And also that millennials have a shorter like life cycle within an organization. Now, I don't want to hide behind those things and say, we're great on the DEI and this is just normal business. Again, I feel I said that multiple times. We have a long way to go, but compared to a larger university or somebody who's working with larger companies, I think we have it. We have a kind of a unique position on that. Now, just because you're small doesn't mean you have figured it out. Some small organizations are extremely toxic, and yeah. So I don't know if on this I have much more to contribute than what I just said.
No, that's fine. Thank you for that. Question: is there any I guess outlet that you all used to become much more knowledgeable about this space around the work that you all are doing in DEI, right? Is there a media outlet, publication, courses or conferences that you all could think of that you all have had success with that allows you all to grow into this space?
I use a lot of LinkedIn Learning. They have lots of different courses, so I use that a lot. And for recruiting, ADP has a lot of diversity, inclusion, like recruiting tips and training. Well, actually not tips, but training courses and certificates that you can get. So those are two areas that I like.
I've completed 2 certificate programs, one from Cornell University and then one from Northwestern. The Northwestern one was online, so it was my first sort of journey into doing something online. The other one was face-to-face, so it was a little bit of a struggle, but both were good. I'm not saying you have to have that to move on. It was just something that I wanted to do as far as to see both of them were a different focus. But what I do actually do quite often is I read Harvard Business Review. I go to the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton College of Business. They have something called knowledge.wharton.penn.upenn. And then Insight from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. They have some great, pieces. And then I actually joined, SHRM is in the United States. So in order to know what's going on overseas, I actually joined the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development in the United Kingdom. And then I joined the Australian HR Institute just to see what's going on in other countries, get another lens, see how things are working somewhere else or how the same issues are being addressed. So I would encourage just branch out and see what's out there.
Nice.
Wow, that's hard to top that, Michael. That's awesome. Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I did a couple of fellowships, and one was called Pro Inspire, and another one is called Mosaic. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because although I see a lot of value on like learning like the technical stuff and the why and kind of best practices, even just yesterday I joined a webinar that for a board that I serve on, and it was about I guess around pride. So they are like making awareness about people's identities and orientations, and it was useful, and I found it like people were just not really participating. And this is a board that is super diverse, and people were like, I already know this stuff, or for whatever reason. Just it was, to Michael's point, like this online thing is just kind of it's challenging. So kind of building a story here, kind of bear with me with my ADHD. I mean, I think there's value on the technical part of that. The biggest learning experience for me have been those those immersion programs, those fellowships, because I got to know people that were different than me, yet in an environment that felt safe. And it took a little while, but just if anybody here has the opportunity to join those conversations to the level that it's comfortable to be uncomfortable, and addressing these issues, that's really when I started having more empathy and sympathy, and I felt that people had more empathy and sympathy for me. So it was this hybrid model of learning the technical stuff, but also just getting to know people in a way that you feel comfortable. And I find two challenges on that. Like, one is that I'm the leader of the organization, and I have been privileged enough to have access to those things. And both Karen and Michael talk about some high-end things that sound, sound super sophisticated, but also sound oftentimes not attainable by a lot of the people that we work with. So I think we have, as leaders and as you guys as organizations, I think we have to make sure that those resources become accessible to people across the organization. And I understand that not everybody can take a week off or a month off or a full year fellowship away, right? But I think we have to be creative on getting that. And the second challenge and opportunity here is that, as great as I felt and as safe as I felt in an environment that was diverse, I think we also need to open these opportunities to people who are part of the mainstream, because it's great to have these conversations among us, and I'm going to have the liberty to say, like, among us, people that are vulnerable in so many ways, but with people who are not like us, they also need to hear these conversations. Now, it can get awkward and it can get uncomfortable, and it might take a little bit to open up, and we all may have to roll our eyes from time to time. But I think until we get to that point, specifically people at the top, and really people across the organization, they just need to get this, because it's great if all the gay people and all the Black people and all the Latinos, I mean, we get it, but the other people need to get it too, right? And they're not gonna get it by just reading a book or watching a video. Like, they also need to jump in and into this deep dive, uncomfortable conversations.
Agreed. Thank you for that. Thank you all for that. I got a question. Well, I got a couple questions popping in. The first question is around I guess hiring. What are some creative ways to proactively source candidates from underrepresented communities?
I'll answer that one. So underrepresented communities, first determine what the underrepresented community is, right? And I talked about that. But then also, once you determine what that community is that you're looking to hire, just say it's Black tech professionals, right? So if you're looking for Black tech professionals, then now you need to look at where are Black tech professionals. They are at Afrotech, right? So that's a conference there are probably 100 organizations, conferences, groups that have been created within the last 2 years. It definitely will take some work for you to find what you're looking for. And I think that's probably sometimes where people, they're so used to doing things a certain way. And so the way they're used to doing it is easier versus what you need to do to really find the talent that you're looking for is a lot more work, right? So if you're looking for Black tech professionals, then you need to figure out where are they, what conferences are being held, what type of groups. So our company focused on diverse tech professionals for the last 3 years. So we're in Slack groups, GroupMe groups, LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups, and then there are different conferences that we're connected with because we did the work to figure out where are these people hanging out, where do they congregate to talk about just life in general, but it's specific to them. And then you need to go to those places. I was actually on a podcast yesterday and I talked about the same thing. If your company operates in a community, say you operate in Nashville, Tennessee, and you're trying to increase your diverse professionals and Black professionals, then you should be in the neighborhood. We are still, most areas are still segregated. You have a Black community and you have the other ones and then you have mixed ones, right? So where's the Black community? Go to the community center. Sponsor lunch at the kids, like do something creative, get outside of your box of just going to HBCUs to find talent. There's other ways to find talent. So if you're looking for them, just like if you're looking for the LGBT community, it's a month of June. I'm sure there are tons of things that's going on that will get you in front of the community that you're looking for. So it's just really getting outside of your comfort zone and being more proactive outside of that.
Cool. Another question that we received. What do you all think is a long-term consequence if we don't do a good job at investing in DEI and some brands continue to ignore it? You can have one.
I don't know the exact quote, but by like 2030 or 2035, the workplace is going to be minority focused or ran anyway. So I think companies, they're going to have to get in play with this, or the processes won't be right, or the environments to me, it's already changing, whether they want it or not. Right, the environment is changing around us, and so companies just have to really see if they want to be on the right side and be ahead of this, and know how to communicate, and know how to make people feel welcome, and know how to have the right programs, the ERGs, and it's just really time to just stop saying, letting it happen on its own. It's really going to have to take a lot of planning and organization. But if not, then I think it's going to be a lot more entrepreneurs created, because people have got to the point to where they're tired of companies mistreating them, considering them as they're underestimated, and they're going out and they're becoming consultants. They're starting their own companies. And so they're creating more entrepreneurs and people. That's why we have this shortage, right? Every industry is having a problem hiring, every single industry. And it's because people have gotten fed up and they're tired, and they're going out and finding other ways to do things. They've created this freelance market, right? People are able to just do everything right from their computer, from anywhere in the world. So if companies don't jump ahead of this and get on board, then they're just gonna lose, the people that they need to help run their companies.
Yeah.
I agree with Karen. That was amazing. Like that's right on. And I think it's awesome that the leading brands oftentimes are leading this work. So there is going to be, I don't think there's a going back. However, there's always a but, right? Giving up power or sharing power is a very difficult thing for human beings to do. So even, I think people people at the top are struggling with this idea that, oh, maybe it's a little bit of this is what I should do. A bigger part of this is what is good for my brand, because I ultimately, as Karen said, I need employees, I need customers, and I need to do that. But there's another whole big chunk of that thought process that's like, oh God, but that means I am going to have to bring somebody in my team that doesn't look like me or think like me, or I'm going to have to move. Yeah, so that's going to be hard. Like there's going to be this natural resistance, but these people will move on, will retire, hopefully, and it's going to take some time, because as that there's a financial incentive for HR and for customers, but just I keep saying giving up power, sharing power it's hard for all of us.
Cool. Last question that I've had, and we could wrap up after that. How can companies, organizations move away from the performativity to real work within the DEI J space? And for those who aren't familiar with the J in DEI, J is justice. And so I think the root of that question is around one of the things that Mauricio talked about earlier, this performative work, this checkbox list. And so do you all have any advice to other companies or organizations to actually tap into the real work instead of checking the boxes, instead of just checking the boxes?
I think what you have to look at it and remember is that any pursuit of diversity is voluntary by any company. It's not anything that's mandated. So like in my arena, the things that are mandated typically come from like federal laws. So like you say, Title VII, Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Executive Order 11246, also known as affirmative action. But then the whole pursuit of diversity and inclusion is a voluntary thing. But what happens is, I think once the company or the organization has this understanding that, it's actually bigger than that, because this whole thing is, you could look at it as being a race for talent. You're not going to survive, because if you don't have people from the populations that have been marginalized to help you figure out how to market to those populations, you're going to perish. And so that's why when I said earlier, you have individuals with different identities that may not feel valued, leveraged, or welcome. When you lose those people, you're going to lose your share in that market, because they're not there to help you. One, it may be that they left in such a way that it's publicized. So your brand has to do some recovering right now, right? We can think about a number of brands across the United States over the years that have made some faux pas in marketing to different, populations. And have they recovered? I think some of them eventually do, but it's not easy, and it's hard. And so one of the things they end up doing is moving to something that's not performative. And remember, you can have diversity and never have inclusion, but you can't have inclusion without diversity, right? And so I think the way you move away from that is you realize that through your marketing, through your forecasting of your primary market and your secondary market, that it's changing. You take a dental practice, for instance. It's a solo effort. Your population may change as far as who you're serving. So you may want to have people in your office that represent that community, because at that point, you're trying to make a living, but you're also trying to provide a service. So I think just being in tune with what Karen mentioned earlier, the population is changing. Even though it's a voluntary commitment, you have a commitment to the community that you serve.
Nice. I thank you for that. And overall, I thank you all for all of the insight that you all have shared. This was great. This was some really good information, and I hope there were some takeaways for the attendees on this meeting. And so as we wrap up, I want to make sure that people know how to get in contact with you all in the organization, and they may be able to collaborate and partner as they build on their DEI strategy in the future. If you all have a website or a social media handle, I'd love for you all to put it in the chat for people to review it, or if there's a link that they can go to learn more about the work that you all are doing at your organization. That'd be great to share that info. Again, we thank you all, and we want to be really respectful of your time, because we know a lot of us have to go, back to doing amazing things for our communities. And so again, we thank you all, people at 3i Creative Communications. This is something that we love doing. We love having these tough conversations and digging into the real work. We do have one every quarter, so definitely be looking for the Ignite More event for Q3. We're excited to get ready to start promoting what that topic and that panel will look like. If you're interested in learning more about 3i Creative Communications, visit us at weare3i.com. And we thank you for your time, and we hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kenneth.
No problem. Thank you.
Take care.